Once again, this is like the LA fire chief is like in a unique predicament here where she obviously doesn't want to boulder Karen Bass too much because they have to collaborate in times of need.
With Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley, who's in charge of the department's more than 3,200 uniformed personnel. We began by asking her how they're doing.
They're resilient. They're putting everything into this. I can guarantee you that. I'm extremely proud of their dedication and commitment to this mission. They're doing everything in their power to save lives and protect property.
I must ask you, because a lot of people are talking about the warning that you sent last month that the budget cuts have, quote, severely limited the department's capacity to prepare for, train for, and respond to large-scale emergencies, including wildfires. You sent that warning about these budget cuts. Was this preventable?
I tell you, from the budget cut side of things, when there's a $17 million cut in our budget, operating costs, immediately from that point, I had to make some tough decisions. I looked at some other duties and responsibilities that we do as a fire department and had to focus right back on the training of our firefighters and also our ability to respond to the everyday fires and EMS.
It's also a unique position because, again, because the fires are so expansive and everywhere at the same time, unless you have firefighters, like every single citizen is also a trained firefighter, it's going to be quite difficult to combat all these fires. Like, there's always going to be larger problems that they cannot tackle. Do you like this person, or is she another government crony? Dude, she's the freaking fire chief, man. She's the Los Angeles Fire Department's fire chief. What do you mean government crony? As far as government cronies goes, like, these are the people that you're supposed to defend unconditionally and vociferously, okay? Who can you defend if not the fire department? What are we doing? Like, I get being skeptical of all public servants or the government or whatever, but Jesus Christ, dude.
Would that $17 million that had been cut from your budget have made a difference in this fight?
I would say with the lean forward posture that we took, knowing that a $17 million cut, we had to take from somewhere, and that was from the non-essential duties and responsibilities that as a fire department we have taken on over the past many, many years.
But with all due respect, in December you had warned that the budget cuts would severely limit your ability to respond to large-scale emergencies. Is that true or not?
Yes, so I would say yes, we were limited to a certain factor, yes.
And let me ask you about how that limited your response, because in the early hours of the wildfires, especially in the Pacific Palisades, we had a team on the ground, a crew there with our reporter, and witnessed a number of homes burned to the ground, and there was not a fire truck in sight. How did that happen?
We pre-deployed the most amount of emergency resources that we could with what we had. With the pre-deployment, when the fire takes off, we're going to push as many resources that we can at that particular incident. And that's what we did. We did exactly what we could with what we had.
So you're saying you didn't have enough resources?
I would say in a WIN event like this that we are living today in day 3, something that is as
You said that the fire department cuts were minimal. It's minimal in comparison to the ginormous budget spent. Yes, if the overall budget is like around 800 million, then yes, a 17 million cut is going to be minimal in comparison. But it doesn't matter because they need 100 extra million on top of that. And if it's going in the opposite direction of their need, that means that they're underfunded. That's the point. But having said that, obviously more firefighters that are better equipped, more training, more preventative measures, especially with like communicating with the public in dangerous areas that are at risk for wildfires. You need to have a constant upkeep to ensure that there is like dry brush that's cleared out and things of that nature, right? Like all of that stuff, even if you did everything right, even if they got $100 million extra, there is no 100% certainty that they would have stopped all of the fires. You understand what I'm saying? There's always going to be a limit. How many resources you could throw at a problem when the problem becomes too large? Blame the gardeners, eh? That's not what I'm saying. Use James Wood tears to negate fire. Like, her point here is that regardless of the underfunding, it's 100-mile winds. A 100-mile wind will carry embers to unpredictable places. That's precisely the reason why the Palisades fire basically erupted out of nowhere and carried it all the way to the coastline in a matter of like 2 hours. That's insane. It was basically a fire hurricane. You understand?
As significant as this particular fire, I would say we threw exactly what we could with what we had. So if I had 1,000 engines to throw at this fire, I honestly don't think 1,000 engines at that very moment could have tapped this fire down.
Yeah.
Chief Crowley, thank you so much for your time.
I don't know why they cut her answers, but yeah, she's basically saying that. That's her final conclusion, is that like it's a fire tornado. So even if we had 1,000 additional engines, like we don't know if we could be able to stop this. Even if they have unlimited water, they don't know if they could be able to, they don't know if they could stop it. Like one of the things that a lot of people are talking about are the fire hydrants, okay? And due to pressures and due to electronic pump mechanisms being out of commission because they cut electricity to certain areas in order to mitigate, like in order to take extra precautions to ensure that more power lines don't go down and expand the area of fire. There was issues with the electric pumps that actually are supposed to push water into other fire hydrants. The problem, however, is that fire hydrants are there for structural fires. So if you have a large area, or if you have like sporadic structural fires occurring in certain areas, certain neighborhoods, that's what the fire hydrants are for. Fire hydrants are not there to stop a wildfire that has engulfed the entire city, that is in an area that is erupting in fire in a fire tornado. You can't fire hydrant your way out of that problem either. So that's precisely the reason why a lot of the professionals kept saying you can't combat this kind of fire with fire hydrants. That's why they were dumping salt water on the problem, even though salting the earth is obviously devastating in terms of using that land in the future, making the land potentially even more hostile to the elements, making, creating even more dry brush potentially down the line that will make it even worse because you're basically killing the land. That's a last ditch effort at that point. It's also bad for the planes unless they're built for it. No, those are planes that are built for it. Why are you trying to justify the current mayor? Wait, what? Big question for me is why the Democrats don't care about LA. Why Ember started at first place given 50 degrees? Great question. Why did the Ember start? I'm not justifying the current mayor at all. I've already criticized the mayor and continue to do so. I think it's difficult for you to understand that I'm just explaining to you how complex the situation is, and a black and white solution to this kind of issue is always going to be endlessly reductive and also will cause you to hyper focus on random things or greatly overemphasize certain aspects of the problem while refusing to recognize other contributing factors.
And we're thinking of you and all the firefighters.
I want to make sure the community knows our firefighters are absolutely doing everything that we can, and I am certainly proud of how hard and dedicated they are working to save lives and property.
Well said. Thank you, Chief.
Using salt water, using planes at night is a clear indication of the gravity of the situation. It's incredibly dangerous to fly over a fire at night, especially when the wind conditions are so crazy. In many countries in the EU, no matter how bad the fire is, the planes are grounded at sunset. Yeah, it is an act of desperation when you're dumping salt water onto... When you're dumping salt water onto the fire, understand that the situation has gotten completely out of control. That's my point. Yeah, the misconception here is that fire department funding would have stopped this. This is land management fuel issue. Even another 100 million probably wouldn't change anything. No, fire department funding also plays a role in land management, though. For example, I'll tell you this much, and I briefly covered this earlier, but it bears repeating. The fire department, for example, could communicate with neighborhoods like the Pacific Palisades on what the best practices are in terms of like harm mitigation, in terms of like the likelihood that this is a potential area of impact. They can go in ahead of time and make sure that, certain types of trees, for example, are not so close to the houses or clearing, making sure that there's like rigorous fire prevention, fuel prevention, in terms of like clearing out the dry brush out of your houses, things of that nature. Funding would help in that regard as well. This is a very complex situation where more funding does absolutely help, not just in prevention, but also in mitigation. But at the end of the day, if there are 100-mile winds that are carrying embers all over the place, then yeah, you're going to run into a problem regardless. You're going to run into these issues regardless. But funding always helps. That's the point. A resident who lives right by Eaton Canyon captured the moment the Eaton fire sparked right into the transmission tower on the east side of the canyon. We don't know yet. We do not know if this is the responsible party. I don't think that there's any reason to just like speculate at this point. They will obviously conduct rigorous examination, rigorous investigations to figure out exactly what the source of the fire was initially. My point is, when you have above ground wires with really old infrastructure, historically in the state of California, the highest likelihood is probably 100-mile winds pushing the above ground lines directly into the brush that is already directly into the vegetation that is overgrown, and most likely that is the most likely contributor to this to the spark initially. That's usually what it is. Yeah, here, this is a great example of this. Obviously, California's deadliest wildfire in history started when an uninspected 100-year-old metal hook holding up a high voltage line wore out, dropped the cable, which sparked against the steel tower holding it up. 85 people died. I'm not saying that this was yet another instance of this exact same thing happening, but make no mistake, this is usually a major contributor. I'm not saying that this is the responsible factor here. We don't know yet, but understand that in the past, that was the contributing factor. That was the inception point. So, you know, it's something to consider. The other side of the story is arson. Okay, a lot of people immediately speculated that arson was responsible. Let's take a look. There was a man detained near Kenneth Fire. Initially, everybody reported it as though he was responsible for the arson. A lot of Republicans did victory laps around this, saying, "Oh, this is not climate change," or "This guy that was arrested here, where is it?" Where Shiraz also posted something like that. Good news, they just arrested climate change. Apparently climate change is a Guatemalan dude in this country illegally. So let's take a look at what the authorities have actually said about it.
All right. Good morning. On behalf of the Los Angeles Police Department, I just want to extend our deepest sympathies to all those affected by our fires. And that includes many of our own LAPD officers who've lost homes and property in this fire. And they continue to serve these communities, and I appreciate all their work. I have a number of important updates for all of you today, and I'm going to start by an arrest that was made late yesterday afternoon. So yesterday afternoon, the Kenneth Fire started at the border of West Hills in the city of Los Angeles and Ventura County. At 4:32 p.m., we received a 911 call that a suspect was attempting to light a fire in the community of Woodland Hills and was being detained by residents. Officers from LAPD's Topanga area responded and took that suspect into custody. And once we learned that this suspect was a possible arson suspect, our Major Crimes Division responded to Topanga Division along with Ventura County sheriffs, who was the lead in the Kenneth Fire investigation. But they responded, they interviewed this suspect. After the interview and additional investigative steps, looking at some additional evidence that was present, they made the determination that there was not enough probable cause to arrest this person on arson or suspicion of arson, and therefore this person was arrested on a felony probation violation.
Anyway, Los Angeles, a man who was detained by citizens shortly after a wildfire exploded near Calabasas and West Hills is not accused of starting the fire, authorities announced on Friday morning. Los Angeles police responded to Woodland Hills around 4:30 p.m. Thursday when a 911 caller said a man was attempting to light a fire in the 21700 block of Ybarra Road, police said. Residents who spotted the suspect held him down until officers arrived. Photos shared on the Citizen app show officers surrounding a home where the man was handcuffed. We were sitting in the backyard and suddenly we hear a car coming to a screeching halt and the guy is running out saying, "Stop, drop what you're holding. Neighbors, he's trying to start a fire. Call 911, called Renata Grinchpun, who witnessed the incident. At the same time, several miles to the west, firefighters from Los Angeles and Ventura counties were racing to contain the Kenneth Fire. The fire was ultimately halted at 1,000 acres and no structures were lost. At a news conference Friday morning, LAPD Divisional Chief Dominic Choi said police investigated the case, interviewed the suspect, and ultimately decided he would not face arson charges. After the interview and additional investigative steps looking at some additional evidence that was present, they made the determination that there was not enough probable cause to arrest this person on arson or suspicion of arson. Instead, the man was arrested on felony probation violation. The investigation is ongoing, Choi said. I would like to thank those community members that were involved in bringing this person to our attention. Blowtorch just a coincidence? See, that's the part I don't understand. Did he actually have a blowtorch or not? Like, people are saying he had a blowtorch, and I saw photos of him being arrested, but I don't know if he actually had a blowtorch or not. Like, I don't know what his deal was. But even then, dude, cops are incredibly aggressive. This would benefit them. This would benefit them tremendously if he was responsible for the Eaton fire. Are you kidding me? They would take, even if there isn't enough evidence, they would still bring him in to be like, no, this is the guy. So the very fact that the same authorities are saying that this is not the guy, at least we don't have enough evidence to pin the blame on this guy, leads me to believe that it might not be. That's all I'm saying. The cops will fly a mission accomplished banner if they caught the guy that started the fire. Exactly. And there are people that are, I mean, there's like some photos about like what the Eaton fire sparked with, or how the Eaton fire started, that are leading people to speculate that it was an electrical fire rather than one that was born out of a random arsonist, if that makes sense.
Initiated every federal agency, from the Department of Defense on, every federal agency to be part of this. And the other thing is, look, you know, I think you're getting a bad rap. I know you're getting a bad rap about these fire hydrants don't have enough water in them. Give me a break. Give me a break. What this is all about is the utilities, understandably, what they did is they cut off power because they're worried about these high tension lines coming down and causing more fires in the wind, right? When they do that, guess what? They shut off the power that controls the ability to pump the water. And so now you're getting generators here. I mean, this is complicated stuff. They're going to have a lot of demagogues out there trying to take advantage of it. But you're doing the right thing.
California voters approved $7 billion in bonds for state water supply infrastructure projects. Of that, $2.7 billion was designated for water storage projects. For more than 10 years later, there are no new dams or reservoirs or other water storage projects to collect and store California's winter runoff, 80% of which is sent to the Pacific Ocean for environmental purposes. Yes, water starts fires. No, he's not. I mean, he is a delusional old man, but he's not wrong in regurgitating the information that others have given him with respect to the way that these water hydrants work. For the record, yes, water doesn't magically appear in the water hydrants, especially when there's not a lot of pressure. You need electric pumps to move water around into areas of need. When the electrical pumps are no longer working because they cut electricity to certain regions, especially regions where there is a fire, an existing fire, the reason why they cut the electricity is so that there aren't additional fires that take place. This is yet another issue with our overall refusal to harden the infrastructure against wildfires, because the electrical lines are above ground in areas where they are super close to the vegetation. When you have 100-mile winds that move these power lines around and cause electrical short-circuiting, they can end up lighting the shrubbery on fire. So they cut the electricity. But when they cut the electricity and there are no backup generators for the water pumps can't function and move water around to areas of need. That's how you arrive at water hydrants not having enough water. Having said that, there's another problem here. A wildfire this size, it cannot be combated with water hydrants anyway, or at least that's what firefighters say. Water hydrants are there for structural fires. They are not there to literally stop a massive area like this from being engulfed in flame.
We're going to get it done, God willing. And I say to the people of Southern California, God bless you. Stay strong. Stay strong. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for everything.
And you know, all kidding aside, you both have my phone number, so.
Trust me. Yes, we do.
No, I mean, for real. Anything that comes up, you have any ideas.
He's for real.
And if you didn't, I got a California vice president, man.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
that helps too.
she's mildly focused on this.
Having access to both of you is a...
Perhaps too specific, but if the fire hydrants wouldn't even be usable, why is this a point of discussion? The real reason why the fire hydrants became a major point of discussion is because, and this is going to dovetail into the other argument that I wanted to talk about, private fire brigades. Rick Caruso is a multi-billionaire real estate developer that owns numerous malls all around Los Angeles. He also owns a mall in the Pacific Palisades. Rick Caruso, being the unimaginably wealthy person that he is, of course, hired private brigades to protect his mall in the Pacific Palisades. He also ran for mayor and almost won. He's a Republican that swapped his party loyalty, his party, right before this election, specifically so that he could turn around and potentially win the mayoral race. Now, he hired private fire brigades to defend the Pacific Palisades Mall, and they actually did defend the Pacific Palisades Mall. Here it is. Here's a video of the entire Caruso property in Palisades Village remains untouched while surrounding homes and properties have been completely destroyed. People will say, oh, this is because this is a newer structure and is up to standard on the new fire codes that were implemented in 2008 and onward. But that is not the only reason. The other reason is because, like I said, he hired a private fire brigade to ensure that his property remained intact. In that process, he found out that there was limited amounts of water that his private fire brigades could use. He made a big stink about it. He said, this is, there's no fire, there's no water in the Palisades. What the hell's going on? And then obviously everyone went along with that. But that is the reason why a lot of people started talking about the water hydrants running out of water. But that is also the reason why, as you can see here, these structures are intact, whereas everything else in the surrounding region is engulfed in flame. Private firefighters. It sounds dystopian. It sounds illegal. It absolutely is not. If you recall, this is something that I've covered before when Kanye West hired private firefighters to defend his Calabasas neighborhood a couple of years prior. They make $7,000 an hour as well. No, they don't make $7,000 an hour. They make $7,000 a day, which is still insanely high in comparison to like what even Los Angeles Fire Department employees make, even though they're definitely that's definitely one of the most sought after positions that you can get in public service, and infinitely more than what the wildfire prevention teams get. Wildfire teams are comprised of federal employees that get paid the lowest possible salary. Anyway, as far as I understand, they do also, of course, utilize the existing fire hydrants as well, for the record. Now, if you know anything about the history of firefighters in this country, that's how we originally started off. Throughout time, there's always been private fire brigades. As a matter of fact, it used to be the only game in town. One must ask the question, why? This was a structure that was inevitably socialized, funded by the public. It is one of the best arguments for socialization because there is constant market competition amongst fire brigades and fire insurance that was privately purchased for certain structures in the city that created problems for everyone. For example, fire spreads. I don't know if you know that or not, but fire has a tendency to spread. It really likes spreading. So you might have a structure that is on your block that was not covered by fire insurance and defended by a private fire brigade. So they wouldn't actually put that fire out. But because that fire would spread, it would inevitably spread to structures that were covered. So you ended up cooking all of the structures in the city.